I remember the years 1974 and 1975 as being the most empty and the loneliest years in my life. In 1976, I made a decision that would change my entire life, and this change continues to this day. On the surface, during those first 36 years of my life, I had lived a life whereas in my appearance I did appear like a good person. In reality, as an adult, I had become an immature, self-centered, selfish husband and father. I did not like this person whom I had become. At 36 years of age, I wanted to change my life. I turned to God to help me. I remembered back to a time when I was only 16 years of age. I remembered a particular evening being with my friend Gary. Gary shared the gospel of Jesus Christ with me, and I had accepted the invitation. I repeated the sinner's prayer as Gary had instructed. In 1976, my desire was to return back to the hope revealed to me in 1956. I now believe that ever since that evening 20 years before, God had always been in the background of my life, but I had neglected Him and I had chosen to follow my own direction in life. My hope now was that it was not too late for me to change my life. I confessed my sins, and with a repentant heart, I asked God for His help for me to change. I believed God had a plan for me, but I needed to be willing to follow and seek Him. This was to become the priority in my life. Changing for me was a slow process, as my heart was convicted of many transgressions, and shame saddened me of who I had been. My hope was, and continues to be, that I will continue to change and live according to whatever direction God leads me unto. As each year now passes, my hope is that this will continue to be so. Over all these years, God has never left me. I had just been named Salesman of the Year at Pioneer, which at that time was the largest Porsche Audi dealership in America. I was preparing to deliver a new 911 Porsche Turbo Carrera to my customer in Raton, New Mexico. It was 4 a.m. in the morning, and I was in the 911 Turbo Porsche Carrera below Cherry Creek Dam on Interstate 225 in Aurora, Colorado. It was still dark, and there was no traffic. I could not see any headlights or taillights ahead of me or behind me. The nighttime view on that part of the interstate was well lit, and you could see for miles in all directions. I hit the gas pedal, and within seconds, the speedometer read 165 miles per hour and was still climbing. The design of a Porsche with the front slope downward pressed the airflow so that it forced the front end to hug the road. The manageability and the control of a Porsche at that speed, because of their design, provided a safety net. In justification, I told myself, well, it appears on this test drive before my delivery that this car is performing all right to me. I can now deliver it to my customer. Raton, New Mexico is 217 miles from Denver, Colorado, south on Interstate I-25, and it took me about 4 hours before I arrived in Raton. Later that year, in only one afternoon, everything in my life changed. Everything in life seemed satisfactory, as I was happy at home and satisfied at work. One day I was in my office at Pioneer, and there came upon me from out of nowhere a desire to return and live again in Lamar, Colorado. I had no idea what I would do in Lamar, as opportunities were limited there due to its population and location. I had a Colorado insurance license, and that, along with my automobile experience, I was confident opportunities would appear. But just in case, I enrolled in Colorado Real Estate School, hit the books, and was granted a real estate license before we moved. I had a peace, as I knew God had closed a door in my life. My faith was that He was in complete control of everything. After I had moved to Lamar, I found out my purpose for being there. This was during a time in the late 1970s and early 1980s when roller skating was popular throughout America. That popularity was viewed on television and in movies, and now Southeast Colorado was again ready to have a roller rink. We were to be the only roller skating rink between Pueblo, Colorado, and Garden City, Kansas. The other roller rinks were both over 90 miles away, and both were in opposite directions. I remember hearing about how the Lamar Medical Center appreciated the Lamar skating rink. About 3 weeks after we opened, I was told that the Southeast Colorado Medical Center had placed over 5 casts upon children who had their arms or legs broken after attending the rink. I was also informed the medical center appreciated our business. I definitely made it clear with posters and announcements that the roller rink could not be responsible for any injuries. I put into place everything possible to keep the rink accident-free. In reality, falling on roller skates is common. By not having a roller rink in that area for 20 years meant that only a few knew how to roller skate. Roller skating had been important in my own life. The advantages to being the owner and the operator of the new roller rink was that 5 years prior, while I was a teenager, I had been the second best roller skater in Lamar. A friend named Buddy held the title of being the best roller skater in Lamar. I remember the many times I received confirmation from others of my purpose for being in Lamar. I was close to being the perfect person for God to return roller skating back to Lamar. I was experienced in marketing, business, roller skating, and I understood the community. Most importantly, I was willing to do what God had placed into my heart. I was told by a pastor in a Lamar church that his congregation had been praying for a person such as me to bring a place like this to Lamar, to take their children off the streets and place them into something that provided a Christian atmosphere of recreation. My desire was to provide a wholesome atmosphere where parents could bring their child or their teenager and know that the surroundings were safe in every way. To me, this included the music and the words that played over the speakers on the skate floor. My faith was great as I was able to use my past marketing experiences in business and sales to reach out to all the families and children throughout the tri-state area. Every song that was played in the rink I would listen to beforehand. I wanted to have a roller skating rink with Christian standards, and this included the songs and music. Thousands came from many areas throughout southeast Colorado to see the new Lamar skating rink, as southeast Colorado had been without a place to roller skate for many years. From that first day we opened, I asked everyone to place their name, address, and date of birth into what I had titled as a birthday book. I asked children and adults alike to register in this birthday book. I would later announce the name of each birthday celebrity over the radio. I would go out to Lamar's only radio station, KLMR, and generate a weekly commercial by announcing over the radio those names who were celebrating birthdays that particular week. KLMR radio's audience was heard over a 100-mile radius throughout southeast Colorado, southwest Kansas, and the Oklahoma Panhandle. I would also mail everyone a happy birthday card, and this included the adults as well as the children. I would take a photo of each person alongside their friends as they celebrated their birthday. I would attach each of these photos to the walls in the snack area for everyone to see and talk about. The entire south wall of the snack area was filled with photos of happy children attending birthday parties at the skating rink. We held a skate-a-thon to raise money for the Jerry Lewis Muscular Dystrophy Association, and our skaters raised more money in the rink that first year than the entire city of Lamar had ever risen in any of their previous years. Those years that I spent in Lamar was to become the most fulfilling and rewarding years in my entire life. I came to realize how fortunate I was, as I was actually a babysitter and entertainer for children between the ages of 4 and 16, and this joy encircled me daily. In today's modern roller skating rinks, I see many of the same marketing tools for a child's birthday party, mirroring those same ideas that I had originally put together in 1978. Maybe I was copied by others. I don't know. I do know other rinks became aware of my marketing ideas because of our location in southeast Colorado with the scattered farms, ranches, and towns. I had to depend on a child their families, and their friends to travel from as far as 50 miles away to roller skate repeatedly. The Lamar skating rink was to become one of the best operated roller skating rinks in the nation. In my opinion, the joy and the smile of a child on a Christmas morning or on their birthday was a treasure to witness. A child's birthday is one of the most important days in the year for a child. Hopefully, the rink had provided a righteous place of growth for a period of time in the life of a precious child. I would venture to say that 95% of my roller skaters were under the age of 16. After they reached age 16, most of my regular roller skaters would get a driver's license, and then their time at the rink would diminish. They would then nightly drive up and down Lamar's Main Street in their hot rod cars, honking at each other exactly as portrayed in the 1973 movie American Graffiti. I had done the same as a teenager in Lamar when I first received my driver's license. One day, when I was in my mid-60s, I came to realize there was an answered prayer that I had received, but I had never fully appreciated. In 1976, I was able to quit smoking. Before 1976, I had been a heavy 2.5 pack per day cigarette smoker. That particular year, I had chosen to change my life. From my age of 15 years, I had smoked cigarettes, and I had done so for over 20 years. Many of my friends had tried to quit smoking, and I would watch and observe. Then, after struggling, it seemed they would fail. In 1976, I attended a 7-day quit smoking course sponsored by Porter Hospital in Denver. At the end of the 7 days, the class instructor invited everyone to join him in a group prayer. I prayed with the others for God to remove my desire to smoke. In 1976, my physical health was rescued from cigarettes. This was over 38 years ago, and I had not smoked a cigarette since. When I quit smoking, I had a newfound physical energy that I never had before. I began a daily routine of running and jogging. Over the following 20 years, I faithfully did this 5 or 6 times each week. It took me to be in my mid-60s to finally realize how this all came about. It was 4 years after my own birth in 1940 that my brother Dwight was born. Soon after Dwight's birth, my family became aware that he would require special needs in his life. He continued to live at home under my family's care until the age of 18. Thereafter, the difficulties for my father and for all of us to care for him became overwhelming, and Dwight was moved into a state care center that was better equipped. My father continued to be Dwight's legal guardian, But after my father passed away in 1979, I assumed that role as I had promised my father I would. Over the years, I've dealt with shame, guilt, and regret, with wishing that I could have done more to make Dwight's life easier. I've talked with Dwight about Jesus and his love for him. When I led Dwight through the sinner's prayer, I believe Dwight understood and accepted who Jesus was. I look at Dwight and think he is such a precious person, as he is always glad to see you. He always smiles and wants to shake your hand, and he doesn't hold grudges, nor does he appear negative about life. To my knowledge, Dwight is kind to everyone. Dwight is difficult to understand and to communicate with. Overall, his needs are taken care of, and his life appears happy, as his life concern is very simple in his needs. In my mind, because of Dwight's innocence, he is more Jesus-like than I could have hoped for. I believe that my brother's faith and trust is in Lord Jesus. I definitely believe Jesus knows and loves Dwight. My belief and my hope is that Jesus is alongside Dwight for eternity. During the late 1990s, and while living in Denver, Colorado, I attended a Wednesday evening Bible study. At times, someone would share a testimony of how in their own life God had reached down and changed their lives significantly, and they were aware of God's presence. I was a believer in the power behind a Christian to share a personal testimony. It would fortify others in their own faith. At the same time, it would proclaim an example of the truth of the gospel to a non-Christian who might be present. One Wednesday evening, I openly shared with the others about what had happened to me while I was working at Pioneer Porsche Audi. I told everyone about that day at Pioneer when suddenly in my spirit there was a desire to move back to Lamar, as this was the town of my birth that held so many disappointing memories in my life. I had never, ever wanted to return to Lamar. Overall, returning to Lamar had been a time in my life when God blessed me greatly, and I will always remember and be grateful. When I finished sharing this testimony that Wednesday evening, those that were present told me this was a testimony that I should share with others. In the following days, I scripted out this complete testimony, edited it, and tried to make it read as professional as I could. I was familiar with Voice magazine. It had the largest number of readers for any Christian businessman magazine in the world, with over 500,000 subscribers worldwide. Generally, in each monthly issue, they would have 2 or 3 articles from different areas of the globe where businessmen around the world shared their testimony. I mailed my completed testimony to Voice magazine. Several weeks later, I was contacted, and it was from Voice magazine. I was asked if I had any colored pictures I could send them about roller skating, as they were a magazine with words accompanied with pictures. This publication of my testimony with Voice magazine was the seed that inspired me to be involved in a ministry. They published my article exactly as I had written, and they included the photos I had sent them. My written testimony had been read around the world, and I did feel blessed. Since that time, I have been interviewed 3 times on Christian television in Denver. My first interview, I shared my testimony. The second interview, I talked about my first book, The Inheritance of God's Blessing. On the third and my last interview, I discussed my ministry, Christian Testimony Outreach. Years later, I created a social site on Facebook that was also titled Christian Testimony. Christian Testimony Outreach, after being my own ministry site to share instructions for over 14 years, was discontinued in March of 2012. This new Facebook site with the same name, Christian Testimony, would provide an interactive site that would require my personal befriending and accepting others. This new interactive social Facebook friend site changed over the years, as Christians, rather than sharing their testimonies, would ask for me to pray for them or to pray for a loved one. I began to author and post prayers. Eventually, that is all I was doing, was authoring and sharing exampled Christian prayers for others. Currently, I have over 4,800 Facebook friends that I have befriended around the world, whereas I interact and openly share these prayers with. There are over 1,200 additional followers who only follow my prayer postings. Most of my Facebook friends have reposted my exampled Christian prayers on their own Facebook sites. I would venture to say hundreds of thousands of Christians around the world have read or heard my exampled prayers that I have shared over these past 9 years. Several years ago, I edited over 295 of these exampled prayers and organized them into a book. This book is published and available in paperback, hardback, or as an ebook. Additionally, I have recorded over 7.5 hours of these exampled prayers into an audio-video format, placing them onto YouTube. These 110 Christian prayers on YouTube can be found under my name. I behold the moon and the stars above me in the heavens, and I am bewildered how anyone of my generation, or any generation, could think this all came about without a creator. Many do not understand that everyone was created to live for eternity. God designed us that way. My hope is that over the years, by my actions or by my words, I have planted a seed in someone's heart that wasn't there before. As you read or hear about my memories, and if your faith is in what Lord Jesus did on the cross at Calvary for you, perhaps someday we will meet, ask me any questions, and I will tell you what I remember. This book reading, taken from the memories of a man in his mid-70s, does not contain a complete accounting of all the occurrences, nor all the events, nor the failed relationships, nor all the failures, and the many personal losses that are actually contained in the book itself.